Most people misunderstand what it really means to have a vision for their life. They think vision is some grand thing you arrive at after years of pondering, or that it strikes in a flash of genius when the stars align and everything suddenly makes sense. But the truth is, vision is not something you find, it's something you build. It's sculpted through action, one decision at a time, often while you're still figuring out exactly where you're going. The greatest mistake people make when thinking about their future is assuming they need to have it all figured out before they begin. They wait. They wait for clarity, for certainty, for permission. They wait for the moment when they'll feel 100% ready. But that moment rarely, if ever, comes. Clarity doesn't come from standing still. It comes from movement. You don't see the full staircase before you take the first step. You step, and then the next part of the path reveals itself. The act of beginning even when you're uncertain, even when you're afraid, sends a signal not just to the world, but to your own mind, I am serious about this. That's when the process begins, and here's the truth most people avoid. Action creates momentum, and momentum brings insight. You don't get the map handed to you in advance. You draw it as you walk. There's a common myth that people who achieve remarkable futures are somehow gifted with extraordinary foresight. That they knew from the very beginning what they were going to do, who they were going to become, and exactly how to get there. But speak to enough successful leaders, creators, and changemakers, and you'll hear a very different story. You'll hear stories of people who began with uncertainty, with fear, with doubt, but they moved anyway. They started where they were. They didn't wait until the conditions were perfect, because they knew something powerful. The cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of making a few wrong moves along the way. Every day you wait to start is a day you teach yourself that your dream isn't urgent. And what you tolerate, you teach. If you keep telling yourself someday, that someday becomes never. The people who create futures they're proud of are the ones who treat today like it matters. They understand that every moment spent delaying is a moment stolen from the life they could be living. They're not reckless, but they are courageous. They're willing to step forward without seeing the whole picture. They trust that with each step the next one will become clearer. They don't let fear stop them, they use it as fuel. There's something profoundly powerful about beginning before you're ready. It shifts your identity. It tells your brain, this is who I am now, and your actions begin to align with that new identity. When you show up consistently, even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable, you start building a track record with yourself. And that track record builds confidence. Not the hollow, superficial kind that comes from faking it, but the deep, earned kind that can only come from doing hard things and growing through them. You start to trust yourself, not because you've always had the answers, but because you've proven that you're willing to look for them. Willing to risk, willing to grow. And as you continue taking those small, consistent steps, something else starts to happen. People notice. Opportunities that were invisible begin to surface. You begin to attract momentum, relationships, possibilities that were never available to the person you used to be the one who was waiting. But now you're in motion, and motion has a magnetic quality to it. People are drawn to action, they respect it, because so few are willing to choose it. We live in a world where people talk a lot about their dreams, but far fewer are brave enough to act on them. They spend hours, days, years even, planning, researching, wondering. And planning is useful to a point, but planning without action is just procrastination with a prettier name. You have to move, not in chaos, not in desperation, but in purpose, with intention. Even if you don't have all the answers, move towards something. Pick a direction, test it, and if it's not right, adjust. The future doesn't belong to those who get it perfect. It belongs to those who get going. The irony is that the more we delay, the harder it gets. Inaction compounds just like action does. Waiting becomes a habit, doubt becomes a way of thinking, and the longer we stay still, the more stuck we feel. The heavier the first step begins to feel, but the opposite is also true. Movement creates more movement. Progress creates more clarity. One decision, one action, even a small one, can break the inertia and start a chain reaction that changes everything. Not overnight, but over time, with consistency, with focus, with resilience. When you begin today, with whatever you have, from wherever you are, you take control back from fear. You stop letting circumstances write your story. You become the author of your own momentum. You set things in motion that your future self will thank you for. You stop asking, "What if I'm not ready?" and start asking, "What if I never try?" Because that's the real risk, not failure, but regret, not making mistakes, but never making anything at all. Motivation feels good, but it's fleeting. It's a spark, not a flame. People often chase it like it's the answer, like the key to changing their lives lies in the next motivational video, the next speech, the next inspiring story. And yes, those things can stir something in you, they can light you up for a moment. But what happens when that moment fades? What happens when the emotion wears off? When the fire dies down? When you wake up and don't feel like doing the thing you promised yourself you'd do? That's where most people fall off, because they believed that motivation would carry them. But motivation was never designed to carry anyone. It was only ever meant to start something. What carries you is discipline. Discipline is the silent force that doesn't care how you feel. It's not interested in your mood, your doubts, or your excuses. Discipline is about doing the work because it's who you are, not because it feels good, not because it's convenient, but because it aligns with the kind of life you want to build. People think discipline is restrictive, that it's a burden, that it robs them of freedom, but that's a misunderstanding. Discipline is what gives you freedom. Freedom to grow, to create, to perform consistently at a high level. It's the structure that supports the life you say you want. Without it, your goals are just fantasies, vague ideas that never take form. There's something powerful about waking up and showing up regardless of your feelings. Because when you do, you begin to build trust with yourself. You stop being someone who hopes they'll follow through and start becoming someone who knows they will. That shift in identity is everything. You begin to see yourself as someone who honors their commitments, someone who does the hard things, and over time, that self-image becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You act differently. You carry yourself differently. You stop looking for shortcuts and start looking for mastery. Discipline creates a deep sense of inner respect. You stop needing validation from the outside world because you've already proven to yourself that you can be counted on. That kind of consistency doesn't come from being motivated all the time. It comes from knowing your why, but more importantly, it comes from turning that why into a system, a habit. The people who seem to do impossible things aren't relying on daily inspiration. They've trained themselves. They've built routines that make excellence automatic. It's not that they never feel tired or lazy or uninspired. It's that they've created systems that allow them to act anyway. They've put safeguards in place. They've learned how to remove friction. They've prioritized action over feeling, and that's what separates those who move forward from those who stay stuck. The people who build a new future don't wait until they feel like it. They understand that waiting to feel ready is a trap. That if you let your emotions dictate your effort, you'll live a life of inconsistency. Because feelings are unpredictable, they rise and fall. But discipline is steady. It's grounded, it doesn't disappear on the bad days. In fact, it's most valuable because of the bad days. Anyone can work hard when they're excited. Anyone can push when they're inspired. But who are you when it's boring? When it's hard, when no one's watching, that's when discipline does its best work. It kicks in when motivation leaves the room. It shows up for you like an old friend, familiar, reliable, and ready to go. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't need a pep talk. It simply says, "This is what we do." And the more you listen to that voice, the stronger it gets. Over time, you stop resisting it. You start leaning into it. Because you realize that the version of you who lives in your potential isn't waiting to feel good, they're acting in alignment with their values, their purpose, their goals. They're not distracted by comfort, they're committed to growth. And yes, it takes time to build that kind of discipline. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic. It's small, consistent actions repeated over and over again. It's doing the reps when no one claps. It's turning off distractions. Saying no when it would be easier to say yes. It's choosing the long game when everyone else is chasing instant gratification. But eventually that commitment compounds. What once felt like effort becomes second nature. What once required willpower now flows with rhythm. That's the gift of discipline. It transforms you. It changes not just your results, but your identity. You become someone who doesn't need to wait for the right mood to do the right thing. You do it because it's what you do. You do it because it's who you are. Most people overestimate the power of their will and underestimate the influence of their environment. We like to believe we are entirely self-determined, that we have total control over our actions and choices. But if we look closer, we realize we are deeply shaped by what surrounds us, the people we interact with, the spaces we live and work in, the information we consume, the rhythms of our routines, and even the unspoken expectations of our culture. Willpower is like a muscle, and like any muscle, it gets tired. It can be strong, but it isn't limitless. You can have the best intentions in the world, the strongest internal drive, the clearest goals, but if you are constantly fighting against an environment that pulls you in the opposite direction, eventually you will bend. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Environment is not just background noise. It's the invisible hand shaping our behavior every single day. If you want to change your life, it's not enough to just set goals and try harder. You need to design the space around you to support the future you're trying to build. And that starts by getting honest about what is currently influencing you. What are you allowing into your life that quietly reinforces your old patterns? What habits are enabled by convenience, by proximity, by tradition, by comfort? It's easy to blame ourselves for not having more discipline, more motivation, more focus, but the real question is, are we setting ourselves up to succeed, or are we setting ourselves up to struggle? Take, for example, the people you spend time with. It's been said that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and while it might sound cliché, there's truth in it. If you're surrounded by people who settle, who complain, who avoid growth, it will affect you. Not always in obvious ways. It's subtle. It's in the tone of the conversations, the energy in the room, the expectations that get normalized. If you're trying to evolve while everyone around you is committed to staying the same, you'll constantly be swimming upstream. It's not about judgment, it's about alignment. Who challenges you to grow, who encourages you when you stumble, who reflects the kind of character, resilience, and values you want to live by. And it's not just people, it's spaces. Your physical environment speaks to your brain. Clutter, chaos, and disorganization send one message. Simplicity, clarity, and structure send another. It's why athletes train in specific conditions, why musicians rehearse in acoustically optimized rooms, why creators carve out spaces for deep work. Your environment either cues you toward your goals or cues you toward your distractions. If your phone is always within reach, you're more likely to use it. If junk food is the first thing you see when you open the fridge, guess what you're going to eat? These are not decisions made from deep reflection. They're automatic reactions triggered by surroundings. When you understand this, you stop trying to rely on raw willpower to carry you through every challenge. You start to build systems that support your desired behavior. You prepare your environment in a way that makes the right choice the easy choice. You don't leave things to chance. You create structure around your goals. Want to read more? Leave a book on your pillow. Want to work out in the morning? Lay your gym clothes out the night before. Want to reduce distractions while working? Put your phone in another room. These are small changes, but they create massive results over time because they reduce friction. They remove decision fatigue. They help you conserve your willpower for when it truly matters. The future doesn't change because you suddenly become stronger than your urges. It changes when you stop placing yourself in situations where you have to fight those urges constantly. A person who consistently reaches their goals is not stronger than everyone else, they're often just smarter about the choices they've automated. They understand their limitations, and they design their life to work with their psychology, not against it. They build an ecosystem that nurtures their growth, one where inspiration, accountability, focus, and discipline are not accidents, they are built-in features of the environment they've created. This is why the most transformational changes don't start with massive decisions, they start with small shifts in how you live, where you spend your time, who you listen to, and what you surround yourself with. You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your environment, and that environment is not fixed. It can be changed. It can be redesigned. You can build a space, physical, emotional, and relational, that encourages you to become the person you're capable of being. That process takes intention and it takes courage, because sometimes it means walking away from what's familiar. Sometimes it means disappointing people who don't understand your growth. Sometimes it means breaking habits that once felt comforting. But in the end, it means giving yourself the best possible chance at becoming who you were meant to be. In a world that's obsessed with expertise, strategy, and performance, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that brilliance is what sets people apart. That the most intelligent, the most educated, the most technically gifted are the ones who will lead, influence, and shape the future. But when you look at the people who actually make the deepest impact, the ones we follow, the ones we remember, the ones who shift culture, build movements, and inspire change, they are rarely the ones with the most credentials. They are the ones with the clearest belief, the ones who stand for something, because people don't follow what you do, they follow why you do it. Belief has a power that brilliance alone can never match. There's a certain magnetism in someone who truly believes in what they're doing. You can hear it in their voice, see it in their eyes, feel it in the way they move through the world. They don't need to convince you with hype or persuasion. They simply are the message, they radiate conviction, and in a time where so many are driven by appearances, by algorithms, by superficial measures of success, someone who speaks from belief cuts through the noise like a signal in the static. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being rooted in something deeper than ego or image. That kind of belief doesn't just attract attention, it invites trust. People want to feel connected to something greater than themselves. They want to be part of a story that matters. They want to contribute to a cause, a mission, a movement. And when they see someone leading with purpose, not just ambition, but purpose, it gives them permission to do the same. It reminds them of what they care about. It stirs something inside them that has been dulled by routine and noise. That is the power of belief. It's not loud, but it's undeniable. It moves people not just emotionally, but into action. And the beautiful thing is that belief doesn't require perfection. You don't have to have it all figured out. In fact, sometimes the most powerful leaders are the ones who are still becoming, who are still growing, still struggling, still human. But they're clear on why they show up. They're anchored to something that matters, and that clarity makes them dangerous in the best way. Because when you know what you stand for, you stop being shaken by every storm. You stop chasing approval. You stop adapting your values to fit someone else's mold. You become unshakable, not because you're flawless, but because you're anchored. We live in a time where skepticism is high and attention spans are short. People can tell when you're faking it. They can sense when your words don't match your values. But when you lead with belief, real belief, tested and lived and felt, it creates alignment. And that alignment creates resonance. People respond to authenticity because it's so rare. We're constantly being sold to, constantly being marketed at, constantly being manipulated by polished messaging and manufactured images. So when someone shows up with raw, unfiltered belief, when they speak from their soul instead of their script, it cuts through, because it's real. This is why leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the most grounded, the most aligned, the most clear on what you represent. You don't have to know everything, but you do have to care about something deeply. enough to stay the course when it's hard, enough to speak truth when it's uncomfortable, enough to be misunderstood without losing your voice. That kind of clarity creates gravity. People gather around it, not because they're looking for a hero, but because they're looking for a mirror. They're looking to see what it looks like to live a life that means something. And the irony is, when you lead with belief, your brilliance actually has room to shine, because it's no longer about proving your intelligence. It's about serving something beyond yourself. And in that space, you become more creative, more courageous, more consistent, not because you're trying harder, but because you're aligned. Your work has direction. Your decisions have integrity, your energy has focus, and people respond to that. Not just followers, but collaborators, partners, allies. The right people find you when you're standing in your truth. But belief isn't just something you have, it's something you nurture. You have to return to it daily, reconnect with why you started, remind yourself of what you value, of who you're doing this for, of the future you're trying to build. Because the world will try to pull you away from it, distractions will multiply, critics will get louder, doubt will creep in, and in those moments you'll have a choice to retreat to comfort or to recommit to your cause. Those who change the future are not the ones who never waver. They're the ones who keep choosing belief again and again, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's lonely, even when it costs them something.